Hey y'all, my name is Justin Whaley and welcome to Still Learning, where I guide you through my learning process of fermentation and distillation both at home and at work. I'm here to teach and to learn. I'm a forever student. If you have a question that I can't answer, I'll study until I find the answer. If you do have a question that you'd like to ask, please reach out in the comments or at my email, stilllearning.inc22@gmail.com. That's stilllearning.inc22@gmail.com. Appreciate y'all. I hope you enjoy. Hey y'all, Justin Whaley here with Still Learning. So here recently, I had the pleasure of having a good friend of mine come to the distillery. He'd done a distillery tour with his wife, and we talked a lot, tried some spirits, and it was just a really, really good time. But they have a podcast, and he had asked if I could film a video for them that they could share on their YouTube channel. Their YouTube and their podcast is called Distilled Bourbon Podcast. After they posted that video, however, there was somebody that had asked a question on there, and I answered it the best I could in text format, but I feel like I'm a whole lot better off getting on here and talking, sharing my knowledge and things like that. The question was, why does my mead taste differently, or is it aging in a glass carboy? And I got really excited because I'm kind of getting back to my roots. I started with fermentation well before getting into distillation. My knowledge with fermentation is limited. My knowledge with distillation is even more limited. But I'm a forever student. I can't change that. And I love sharing my knowledge. So that's why I got so excited about this. I'm kind of getting back to my roots. So let's get into it. Whenever you're creating alcohol of any type, whenever you're fermenting, you're creating a few things. You're creating alcohol, obviously. You're creating a little bit of heat because it's a metabolic process, and you have to sometimes control that heat because you can stress yeast and create some off flavors. You can also kill your yeast off if you get too warm. And you're creating gases. CO2 being that main gas, and it's very important to have CO2 because it's going to create what I call a safety blanket over the ferment to keep oxygen from getting in there. Oxygen is very important in the start of fermentation to get it kicked off and going, but you don't want it mid ferment or at the end of ferment in large doses. But you're also creating some other gases, some volatile, nasty things that create some funky flavors, some nasty smells. A lot of people describe it as sulfurous, rotten eggs. I've tasted some vegetal things as well. I don't really know what that is, but there's some things you can do to get rid of that. You can let it sit. I will tell you, I've made 3 wines that I liked as soon as they were clear and ready to bottle. All the other ones needed time. I've made no meads, not a single one that I've liked as soon as it was ready, clear and ready to be bottled. Actually, my first mead almost made me just quit making mead because I made it. I bottled it when it was clear. I tried it a few days later and hated it. Absolutely hated it. I left it sitting in my basement. I actually forgot about it until I got ready to go on vacation and took a bottle with me on vacation, and then I loved it. So it just needs time. Now, you can't speed up that process. Every time that you rack that mead or that wine from the primary, from one vessel to another between ferments, you're going to off gas it a little bit. Now, between your first and second one, you can speed it up even a little bit more. You can manually degas that. You can put it in one container, give it a little shake. Be careful with it doing that because I promise you can create a mess. Or you can use a degassing wand. Essentially, it looks like it's a piece of plastic that goes in a drill, and you can put it in the end of the carboy, and it'll spin around, degas a little bit. If you don't have one of those, can't buy one, can't find one, you can get a metal coat hanger, cut it, bend it up, make it look a little funky, sanitize it, put it on a drill, do the same exact thing. Now keep in mind, you can do that between your first and second ferment. So from your primary ferment to your secondary, don't be afraid to degas a little bit. It's not going to hurt anything. You're going to release enough of those gases and get them up there to have a nice blanket once again to protect that ferment. Now, get into another thing here. Yeast. Your yeast that you select. I'm not going to get into a whole lot of distillation with this video, but I will tell you something that I've learned at work is yeast will impart about 15% of your flavor whenever you are going to ferment, distill, and mature something. So I have to believe that it will impart different flavors, different varieties of yeast in mead. So what I would suggest is do 5 half-gallon batches with different yeast in each one to see which one you like, because it's going to impart different flavors. I will say when I first started, I was using Fleshman's bread yeast. Creates a good wine and a good mead. Not great, but a good one. I've used some wine yeast. To be honest, I liked the Fleshman's bread yeast more because some of those wine yeasts I just weren't as predictable as I thought they were going to be. But my favorite yeast that I've used is one that I found at work. It's one that we use at work. It's a brandy yeast. It's called Vin 13. Now, I will say when it's fermenting, it smells like hot garbage. I don't like the way it smells when it's fermenting. But it creates some tropical notes, some pineapples and citrus notes that just go really, really well with mead. So if you can get your hands on some Vin 13 yeast, try that out. See what you think. Now, something I will say is, I said earlier that you don't want to oxidize it, but every time you rack it, you're going to get a little bit of oxidization. And that can be a good thing. A little bit of oxidization can go a long way when it comes to a wine and a mead. But a little bit of that can help boost that flavor, or can help add another layer of flavor when it comes to wine and mead. I do hope this helps you out a little bit. If anybody has any questions when it comes to fermentation, distillation, if I don't have the answer, I will find the answer and I will share it with anybody and everybody.